Every year or so, InterNations does a poll on the worst and the best countries for expats to make friends in. And every year, those countries tend to change somewhat. I wanted to narrow it down to the bottom 10, those countries that seem to come up time and time again. The great news is I've been to most of these countries on the list, so I will share my own personal experience on them. The bad news is I haven't actually lived in these countries, so to make up for it, I'm gonna also share the experiences from people on Reddit. The first country on this list does not surprise me in the least, and that's Estonia. Now, Estonia actually ranks pretty high on this list in the way that it's actually the best in the worst category. And this is from a poll in 2021. And Estonia never made it on the poll in 2023. So maybe this will feel a little bit like cheating since I'm putting it back in. As some of you know, I went to Estonia this past summer and I flew there from Norway, which in itself is an incredibly reserved country. But for whatever reason, Estonia hit me really hard. I don't know if it was the combination of the freezing cold weather. I mean, I had to wear a jacket for 4 days in a row, and that was in July. How hard it was to stop people on the street, or the overall energy level that I got from people. It literally felt like the energy was somehow sucked out of Estonia. I remember an incident where I went to the store and there was an Indian man working there behind the counter. Now, I tried to barter with him in a very playful manner. I was saying, hey, well, maybe you can do this for, 3 euros instead of 4 euros. Not only did he not lower the price, which was fine, he also didn't react. There was no expression on his face. He didn't kind of play along. He didn't banter. So it seemed to me that even the immigrants from the warmer countries assimilated so much into the Estonian culture that they have somehow introvertized to the point of very little energy levels. I do believe that there is a reason that Estonia self-brands itself as a Nordic country, since it does have a lot more Nordic values compared to the rest of the Baltic sphere. But also it's that post-Soviet feeling in the air with people highly reserved and highly on guard that makes those interactions much more difficult. The second country on this list also doesn't surprise me in the least. Their capital city was recently rated the most unfriendly city in the world. And it's a shame because I think that Vienna is a very beautiful city. Of course, as you now have guessed, this country is Austria, not Australia. Austria has ended up among the bottom 10 of the ease of settling in index in 9 out of the past 10 years. In 2023, it comes in 52nd out of 53rd, almost at the very bottom. I've been to Austria a few times, and one of the first times was when I had just started the channel and I went to Vienna to do interviews on the streets. Now, Vienna truthfully marks for me the worst experience of filming on the street. Don't get me wrong, I'm so used to being rejected. Anybody that films on the street knows that it's absolutely common to be rejected. But there are different types of rejections. The nicest rejections I ever got were in Sweden, funny enough, in Mexico and in Brazil. And Vienna marks for me the worst rejections that I've ever experienced. And this was part of the reason that I actually never went back to film there again. But I came back to Austria this year and I went to Graz and Salzburg, partly to see Austria, partly just to hang out and have a relaxing, although very expensive stopover in the mountains of Austria. And I took this time to ask Austrians what they thought about the whole unfriendly Austrian stereotype. And many have said that yes, they do believe that Austrians can be very unfriendly, but specifically in Vienna. Viennese are known to be just like the grumpiest, most negative bunch. I was curious about why that would be, so I went on Reddit to check out what Austrians thought about it. Pretty much, yeah, we're annoyed by people generally, even other Austrians. Especially other Austrians. No, we are friendly, but just not to strangers or people that we know or anyone else. So some self-deprecating humor, which I really love. At least they're honest in the fact that they may not be so friendly. There's a word we have, grantig, that describes the attitude you're encountering. Don't take it personally, it's part of our DNA. And there are a few theories about why Austrians may be more negative. Vienna especially can be more reserved and formal. Austrians also can communicate in a more direct, brash manner, and for anyone that's not used to it, it can come off as rude. Austria also has a complex history with 2 world wars, potentially causing people to be more guarded. The next one on the list is Finland, and since Norway and Sweden follow pretty closely by, I thought I would lump them together as, let's face it, Nordics are very, very, very similar when it comes to making friends. And it may seem like I'm always talking about the Nordics, like I'm obsessed with them or something.
No, Sweden, Denmark, Sweden, Iceland.
By the way, on an earlier poll by InterNations, Sweden came in dead last, making it the hardest country to make friends. If you've watched my channel before, you know I made a video called "This is the loneliest country in the world." And of course, that country was Sweden. Finns, just like Norwegians, just like Swedes, typically make friends in school. And once that period of their life is done, the friendship doors close forever. Applications have been sent in and reviewed, and I'm sorry, but we're not accepting any more applications.
No, God!
And God forbid you're in our country for an indefinite amount of time, so why should we take on the burden of another friendship if you might not even stick around? It might sound absolutely ridiculous to you as a foreigner, but this is the Nordic mentality to making friends. Nordics, especially Finns, are known to be reserved and distant. There is discomfort that comes with making small talk or engaging in conversation with a stranger, which is why their version of paradise typically looks like this. Unlike the Austrians or the Germans that will point out if you're doing something stupid, if your hair looks ridiculous, Nordics and especially Swedes tend to shy away from confrontation. This is why the nicest rejections I received were in Sweden. It was all, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I can't. Thank you so much for asking. They can be super sweet if you engage with them, except they prefer you do not. Unless they are out drinking, it's summertime, or they're there to socialize. Did I mention drinking? I remember trying out a social experiment when I was in Finland. I was in a supermarket looking at labels, and if you know anything about Finnish language, it looks like nothing you've ever seen before, except for maybe Hungarian. Anyways, I was so confused about what it is I was holding in my hand. Was it pork? Was it fish? Was it blood sausage? And so what I did is I would approach Finnish people in the supermarket to ask them to translate it to English. Now, the reaction of people when I purposefully strutted towards them with a look of determination on my face was literally that of horror. One guy, I swear, he looked like he was ready to hide behind an aisle. Like he literally jolted back. It was a fight or flight response, except more of a flight response. Looked like he was literally gonna make a run for it. And I kid you not, this was the typical reaction in Finland. People are so uncomfortable around these type of confident approaches. But as soon as they realized I was a foreigner and I needed help in translation, they were super happy to help me, and they were actually very proud that they were my savior for the day, and they helped me figure out that it was blood sausage. So why are the Nordics on this list? It comes down to the Nordic mentality of self-sufficiency, of not interfering in other people's business, of not bothering other people, which is why it can be quite an isolating region of the world. I think that people are also so comfortable in their set routines, with their set group of friends, with their set schedules, that it can be really hard to fit into this, and it can take a lot of time to build that trust. Next up on the list is another European country, another German-speaking country, or at least a part of this country is, and another country surrounded by mountains. You guessed it. It's Switzerland. Honestly, I want to say I'm shocked by these findings, but come on. We all know that Switzerland is one of the hardest countries to make friends. According to InterNations, Switzerland remains at the bottom 5 of the ease of settling in index, ranking 61st out of 65 countries in 2017. Close to 7 in 10 expats in Switzerland agree that it's difficult to make local friends, and just half give the general friendliness of the population a favorable rating. Here are a couple of Reddit posts that I wanted to share to give you a little bit of a perspective on how foreigners feel in Switzerland. I've been going to the same bakery for years and have had the same staff wait on me. I don't know their names and they don't know mine. Even though we order the same thing, they never say something like, chocolate croissant coming right up, or acknowledge us or ask how we're doing. Here, it's literally the same greeting every time, like clockwork. I find the Swiss superficially friendly. They're nice and polite, but it doesn't have any warmth, depth, and sincerity. With the Swiss people I know, I had to set appointments to hang out with them, which was so weird to me at first. After a while of knowing each other and hanging out, they will easily call you their friend, but not be there when you need a friend. It's just part of that niceness that they have. I find most of them to be a bit frigid. They always have a smile on their face and they look very welcoming. But I've never felt more lonely, surrounded by so many friendly looking people. The next country on this list is Japan. Now, Japan has only joined this poll recently, so it's one of the newer countries to join the list, unlike some of those countries that have been on this poll time and time again. And the reason I wanted to talk about Japan, apart from the fact that I feel like we've just been talking about Europe this whole video, but I find that Japan is one of those incredibly interesting countries to talk about. As we know, Japanese are some of the most polite people out there, but getting past the exterior can be tough. Japan is also one of the most homogeneous countries with a very unique culture. culture. What might be considered normal in your country, like being overly assertive, direct, or talking very loudly, would be looked down and considered impolite in Japan. Most importantly, there is this strong group mentality and a distrust of outsiders. So Japanese will often feel on guard with you if you're not part of the group. And because Japanese are so focused on group harmony, they will often not express what they really think or how they really feel, which can make the whole experience of getting close to them incredibly difficult. Moving on to the next one, and this one is back again in Europe. And that one is, unsurprisingly, Germany. Now, Germany is not on the recent poll, but it seems to come up time and time again in the worst lists. One of these is the ease of settling in, where Germany ranks 50th, local friendliness, 50th, finding friends, 49th, and culture and welcome, 49th. So if you're looking for a terrible place to settle in, find friends, and feel welcome, Germany has your back. Go Germany. According to InterNations, 3 in 10 expats say that people in Germany are not friendly towards foreign residents, compared to 18% globally. And 55% find it difficult to make local friends, compared to 36% globally. In the last decade of the Expat Insider survey, Germany has always been at the bottom 10 for making friends. One of the countries that I didn't expect to see on this poll is Kuwait. But then again, I don't know so much about Kuwait, so I don't have really any feeling about these findings. Saudi Arabia was another country that made the poll time and time again. And I've done a lot of research into Saudi Arabia, of course, understanding how oppressive the culture is and definitely was for so many years, how controlled the society is, and how Saudis don't interact with foreigners in the least. This definitely comes as no surprise. What comes as a surprise is actually why Saudi Arabia is no longer on this list. But these countries have made the poll 5 years in a row, so that should tell you something. As many as 59% of expats in Kuwait find the attitude towards foreign residents generally unfriendly. I obviously have no experience in this, as I said, so I wanted to share a couple of the Reddit posts. Kuwait is one of the most unfriendly countries, as its citizens are quite naive and rude, to be honest. One guy told my friend, "Go get your eyebrows waxed." She was so upset and had every right to be. I was ashamed and I told her not to take it personally, as Kuwaitis do this all the time. Kuwaitis are rude and mean to other Kuwaitis. You can't leave the house without hearing a random comment about the way you look or what you're wearing from a random stranger. I often heard that foreign women were subject to harassment in public areas, like yelling vulgarity from cars, whistling, and even men flashing their private parts. Kuwait is a place where the rules and laws are strict for expats and the locals get preferred treatment. And now, without further ado, I wanted to welcome the least friendly country to the table. Insert drum roll. Welcome, Denmark. Okay, so while this one is not exactly a shock, I also don't think that Denmark deserves the #1 place. Denmark, for me, is one of the most direct and outspoken and casual Scandinavian countries. Compare it to Sweden, which is a lot more uptight. I find them to be a hybrid between the Dutch and the Germans and the rest of Scandinavians. So I do find it a little bit odd that it marked the #1 spot. Now, of course, the one thing that doesn't surprise me is it is a Scandinavian country. Nordic countries typically travel together for these polls, whether it's the happiest countries in the world or the worst countries for making friends. When there's one Nordic country, there they are all, except for Iceland on this list. But we'll wait for the poll on the STD ratings, and that's when we'll probably see Iceland. So that's it for the list. Apparently, the Netherlands and South Korea has also made it on this list. I don't want to talk about them because I feel like I've talked enough, but if you have any thoughts on that as well, please let me know below. And would you want me to make a video about the best countries to make friends? There is one country that is considered the best time and time again, and I've spent a lot of time in this country, so I think it would be a cool video and definitely a more positive video. In this video, I wanted to be very honest with you guys, so it may come off as an incredibly negative video as I just talk about negative things, but it goes without saying that these kind of videos need to be very honest, and I don't want to sugarcoat something that I believe to be true. And of course, I've spoken from my own experiences, from the research, from the poll, and from the experiences of other people on Reddit. Of course, having said that, there are some positive experiences from those people on Reddit. So it's not all just bad or just difficult. You're not doomed if you move to these countries, and there's definitely ways around it. By the way, if you're moving to Sweden, if you're moving to Finland, if you're moving anywhere in the world, but just starting with Sweden and Finland, I now have country-specific guides that focus on everything you need to know about forming connections. If you want to understand the culture, if you want to understand the dating scene, these guys are absolutely perfect, as I go incredibly specific with them. So yeah, if you guys like these type of videos and you want to support, I would very much appreciate. Stay tuned for the next one, and as usual, keep breaking down your barriers.